Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final session in the Channel Week series. We're glad you could join us today. We've got a great session coming up. We've talked a lot about buying behavior and some of the impacts of that and channel-related go-to-market scenarios and partner go-to-market scenarios. A key underpinning of that, obviously, in all B2B buying, but especially with channel, is content and how content is helping to enable that. So this next session, we're going to share some tips and tricks around how to create content for the channel and for your partner community, and also show you some examples of some new ways that's being done. So this session is Channel Marketing Remix, how new content formats and approaches are driving partner and buyer engagement. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Channel Marketer and Demand Gen Report. And again, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Quick housekeeping. This series has been hosted by Demand Gen Report and Channel Marketer. We would encourage you to subscribe to both those publications if you're not doing so already. You get great weekly content, articles, trend reports from both. We also have proprietary research that we create, and you can get complimentary subscriptions to both of those. We also encourage you to check out our social media presence on LinkedIn and Twitter. Reminder, we also host a physical event in February. It's going to be coming up February 24th to the 26th in Scottsdale. Great event. We have a whole track on channel marketing, so take a look at that. We just opened up registration for that. You'll be getting updates on the agenda for that going forward as well. Throughout the week, by attending sessions, you've got points to win prizes as part of our prize pack. So joining this and going back and checking out others will increase your chances to win, and you can win the Starbucks gift cards, as well as some winners will get free passes to the B2B Marketing Exchange event that I touched on earlier. Our presentation is going to last about 30 minutes, and then we're going to take some questions. Go ahead and type in any questions as they come to mind. You can put them right into the Q&A tab within the On24 platform. Within the platform, you can also monitor social media and also be some related resources on today's topic and examples that you'll be able to access as well. So I'm really glad we've got two of our most sort of elite team members on joining me today to talk about this topic. Alicia Esposito is actually a senior content strategist across all of our brands at G3, and she works really actively with Content for Demand, which is our sister brand and agency that works with a lot of top B2B marketers. So excited to have Alicia join us. And also Brenda Kane, who's a senior content strategist with Content for Demand. Brenda has an extensive background in brand marketing and product marketing, as well as the consulting and strategy work she's doing with a number of our clients on Content for Demand. So Alicia and Brenda, really excited to have you join us today. Welcome. So I turn it over to Alicia and Brenda to get us started. I just want to share some sort of background. With Demand Gen Report, we've done a number of studies that look at content's impact on B2B buying. When we do our B2B buyer study every year, we find the content continues to be a huge influence on buying decisions, how vendors are initially engaging brands, how they're selecting it. But we also look at content preferences in our content preferences study. And some of the things that we've seen and we'll talk about today and address is just how content preferences and behaviors are shifting. We're going to talk a lot, and we've seen a big spike in gravitating towards interactive content. So traditionally, a lot of B2B content were things like white papers and product sheets. But buyers are expecting, I think it's kind of gravitating from their consumer lives, that they're expecting content to be made more easy to navigate, a little bit more immersive, and there's a lot of great examples of how brands are doing that we're going to share with you today. Video is becoming much more popular. People like to sort of watch as opposed to always just read, and different examples of that. Mobile is really critical. It's not always on computers that people are engaging with content, so screen size and dynamic content is really critical. And then, content from influencers, we're going to share some examples of that, and we think that's a really interesting opportunity within channel and partner community is to tap into your network of partners and look at their influence and how that might help you create more engaging content that's not just your brand talking, but bring a more of a community approach. And then, again, B2B content is complex in a lot of cases. There's complex stories that need to be told, but they don't always need to be long. So we're going to try to share some interesting examples of how content can be engaging, really try to keeping it easy to navigate and condensed as much as possible. The thing that we find with our content preferences study is buyers really want context. They don't want just generic content. They want it to be as relevant to their needs as possible, and we think that's really important in the channel and in partner scenarios as well. So as you can see on the screen here, they're looking for content to be really relevant specifically to their issue and pain point that they're trying to solve. They'd also like it to be relevant to their specific industry, specific topic area that they're trying to research, and then their role. So any opportunities you have to create content that really speaks as much one-to-one as you can and really make it as relevant, really as specific as possible. And we've got some great, interesting examples of that we'll share with you today as well. The other recommendations in our studies that we find, we ask, B2B buyers, what would you tell brands, in doing their content? The number one was use more data. So I think, buyers are looking for proof points in B2B. They're really risk averse. So as much as they can, build a case, share it with their team. So it's a lot about enablement, and we're going to share with you some examples of that, about how you can enable buyers, you can enable partners, you can enable your sales team, and data is a really critical way to do that. The other thing, which seems contradictory in B2B, but everything doesn't have to be a sales message. So as much as you can create thought leadership, as much as you don't have to create content that's really overt just about your brand and about your selling point, but really trying, again, to solve those pain points. And then adding more insights from thought leaders is another one. So we're going to talk about influencers. We're going to talk about ways to bring in partners and thought leaders into your content, and also customers as well. And then final thing is not to overload with copy. So it doesn't have to be dense. It doesn't have to be jammed with copy on every page. And we got some great examples of that. So I want to dive in and turn it over to Alicia and Brenda to get us started on some examples and tips on how to address all those trends. Alicia?
Thanks so much, Andrew, and thanks so much for sharing some of that foundational research, because I really do think that it speaks, it resonates really strongly with a lot of the points that we're going to be bringing up today. And, it's really great to be here, because I actually got my early start with the G3 family of brands with launching Channel Marketer Report. So I did have a few solid years in covering the channel marketing space, speaking to a lot of vendors and, partner communities, of course, solution providers in the space that are helping facilitate these stronger connections between vendors and partners, and of course, the entire channel and customers. So it's been really interesting to experience this evolution personally and professionally, and speak to some of the new realities that vendors and their partners must face in striving to build those stronger connections with their prospects and their current customers. And I think really it all comes down to, one foundational concept that we're hearing more and more, I think, not just in the channel environment, but, across all B2B brands today. And that's the need to really create a end-to-end experience through content. And Andrew kind of alluded to this earlier in the presentation, that it doesn't have to just be product-focused content. It doesn't have to be spec sheets or, that nitty-gritty information, the investment rationale that vendors need to provide to their partners. It really needs to be a top-to-bottom experience, because more and more, partners are feeling tasked to build their own brand awareness, to generate their own thought leadership and expertise in their particular landscape or industry. So, really the foundation of this entire conversation is vendors must empower their partners to better understand their audience, better understand their buyers' needs, pain points, and preferences. And because at the end of the day, partners are largely the ones that are in the field. They're having those one-to-one conversations. So they need to feel empowered to not only, use the content from their vendors in a way that's relevant. They want to feel like that content illustrates, their expertise and their thought leadership in this space, but also give them the power to reuse, repurpose, and customize that content. Not only that's going to, the prospect community and the buyer community, but also to their sales reps as well. So I think that's really the most critical trend or imperative for, channel marketers today. Create that top of funnel experience, middle funnel, bottom of funnel. There needs to be a comprehensive narrative that not only empowers buyers, but empowers, sales reps as well. And I think, this notion of sales and marketing alignment has been around for a while, but I think we're seeing it more pronounced than ever, especially in the channel environment. There needs to be a higher level strategic conversation around the stories that, you want to tell as a brand, and how content is going to facilitate that story, not only to partners, but through partners as well. And Brenda, I think it's important to bring up again that you obviously have expertise from the brand perspective, working within an organization, helping with product marketing, brand marketing, and now you're on the agency side. So do you have any particular thoughts or insights around, the role and impact of sales and marketing alignment and how that facilitates the creation of this powerful content treasure trove, so to speak?
Sure. Thanks, Alicia. Yes, I mean, historically, it was always there was always a very hard wall between marketing and sales, and marketing didn't do sales' job, and sales would always complain that marketing didn't understand what they did. And I've seen that really completely disappear, and I think this especially comes as technology has allowed us to merge, like our marketing automation platforms with our CRMs. And so there's no longer that demarcation anymore. So now what we're seeing, especially with the clients I'm working with today, is that because there's not that hard line, we're creating content really that top, middle, bottom of the funnel goes across, so from the earliest stages of prospecting all the way through sales enablement. So the content we're creating is what we need to think about it is in terms of repurposing it and using material that we can create that's the high-level thought leadership and then goes all the way down to the product level. And one of the things I used to see a lot on the marketing side is that the marketers always want to fall back into talking about their products. And I think it's really important, as you stated at the outset here, is that we really need to focus on buyer needs and buyer pain points and start talking about how we help them and not focus on the product at the beginning, because that's not where the buyer is in terms of the buyer's journey. So to kind of bring all that together, we're seeing this real unification of content development, and that's for the channel, it's for our marketing people, our sales people, where the content really needs to be able to be used throughout the entire journey. We need to create content that speaks to our buyers at every point along the way, and that uses different formats and different packaging, so to speak, different means of delivery to align with whatever our buyers need and also with whatever our partners need. So that might mean that we are also combining not only digital content, but maybe even putting direct mail back into the mix, adding telemarketing, really tying everything together for the sales part of it so that we're working together towards the same goal, and also so that marketing can measure its influence on sales, which has also become, of course, very important for marketers. It's not enough that they just say, here are some leads. We have to be able to measure what we do.
Yep, that is a great point, Brendan. We're actually,
yeah.
Yep, and we're actually going to be getting into measurement a little bit later, so I think that's a great point that you just brought up. And with that, I did think it would be valuable to, spotlight a few examples of how we're touching on that partner and sales enablement side of things. We do have experience working on content specifically for the sales rep, but also, ways that sales rep can use content. So Brendan and I are both going to be sharing our own respective examples here. And on the screen now is actually an example of some content that we developed for NASDAQ. And this was in regards to, this new, positioning, a new, product update, new brand that they were really bringing to market. And, the key thing that they wanted to do was really drive awareness and excitement for their sales community. So this isn't necessarily a case of, handing off content to sales and saying, here, use this. This is a case of really getting the sales team on board and excited about, a new product initiative, a new go-to market strategy, and most of all, driving awareness and education around how to have the ideal conversations with prospects as you're trying to educate the marketplace and, have those tailored conversations that are required. And of course, when creating the sales enablement content, there is a conversation around, well, what kind of content is best for our sales reps? And, what we've found just based on some of the projects that we've done, some just general benchmark research, it's all about ease of access and ease of consumption. And, for this particular group, it was all about, they were still very big on PDFs, which is largely very much still the case for a lot of sales teams because they like to print documents and have them on their desk. But it was also focused on how do we make this content as easy to consume and apply as possible. So we, focused on creating a customizable PowerPoint template that had fields illustrating to them how they could customize the PowerPoint to better suit the needs and situations of the prospect that they were talking to. And also, really quick hitting content formats like FAQs. You go to like an FAQ on a website, so we applied that to a content format, checklists, top points or top messaging points for conversations, questions to ask. So again, very pointed content pieces so they know as soon as they read the title what they're getting into and what the value is, and how they can use the content to have more tailored and relevant conversations. And Brenda, you actually have a really interesting example from another client, and this was more through the lens of creating a resource that allows the sales team to use existing content more effectively. So I'd love for you to share a little input there on how that was developed and most of all, how that was used. Brenda?
I'm here, Lisa. Okay. Yes, I like to talk about this particular campaign toolkit because this was an interactive toolkit. So not only did it give the partners and the salespeople tools, but it actually showed them the content so that they could look at it right here in the toolkit. So it was designed for channel partners and for sales to teach them and to help them know how to use the content, what order to use it in. It gives them information about their buying audience so they know who they're talking to. It gives them some main messaging to use so that they can focus on the key points. And this was for a new product launch, their new flash storage device. This really makes it easy for the partner to know exactly what to do with the content that's been created. So rather than just saying, here's a pile of content, go use it, we actually took them through the whole process, helped them understand the new product and how it worked, what its benefits were, how it was different from what they were selling, who they were selling to, tips and tactics for talking to these people. And then we actually gave them each resource to use, whether it was video or another piece of content, and showed them what it looked like, what the key points were in each one. And for example, if it was a video like you see here, they could actually look at the video right here. So, and then I just briefly want to touch on another one that we're working on right now, just to show how you can take this concept and expand it. We've got a client who has 5 solutions that all fall within one family. And what we're doing is creating a series of what we're calling Go Live kits. And within these, we're giving them a modular deck that they can use for slide presentations. We're giving them a getting started guide and also an infographic that they can actually print out and have their, they give this kit to their partners or to the actual customers, and then the customers or partners can use them with their end users. So they can give them getting started guides, they can do presentations for the company, they can also have an infographic that they could actually print out and have people put up in their cubicles that show the benefits and really get them excited about the product. So a lot of times when you implement a new solution, everybody's fearful about how it's going to change their jobs, make their lives more difficult, and all of this is designed to really ease that whole process. And it even includes emails that the partners or the customers can use with their end users to say, here it's coming, now it's here, it's been in place now, and here's how it's helping everybody. Really designed just to smooth the whole process and get people up to speed, get them excited about what's coming, and make them feel comfortable and ready to use it.
Great. Thanks so much, Brenda. I know everyone listening to this webinar now is probably like, oh, gee, this is a lot. This is a lot of content that I'm going to create if I'm creating content, not just for my sales reps, my direct sales reps, but also for my partners, and then of course for them to use in campaigns to prospects and end customers. You know, this is a bit daunting, right? And that's where, you know, modular content strategy really comes into play. And we're seeing a lot more brands really invest heavily in this because it allows us, instead of creating net new content from scratch, you know, starting from, you know, square one every single time, developing a scalable content strategy in which bits and pieces of content are derived from a foundational asset or a foundational story. And there are a few different ways to do this successfully. You know, you can kind of go from the bottom up where, you know, you have a foundational, say it's a ebook or, you know, a research report. And some of these can go up to 20 pages, right? This is a big, meaty asset. It takes a lot of time and a lot of heart and a lot of SME input and research. This is really the hub of, you know, a campaign or, you know, a marketing initiative. And then the goal is to, you know, extract little bits and pieces to create these short form assets, whether it's checklists, whether it's Q&As or briefs, best practices guides, all of those short form, very easy to consume pieces. And, you know, they each have their own dedicated story that comes from this foundational asset. And those can be further broken down into blogs, into social posts, into, you know, social images. So as you can kind of tell from how I'm explaining this, it's almost like, you know, building blocks, right? And that's how we like to, you know, tell our clients about this approach and the benefits. And then some people kind of take the reverse approach. They start with a lot of little pieces, whether it's a checklist, briefs, and then over time, they bring those stories together to build a more overarching, you know, big rock asset. So this is just one way that you can make the process, the content creation process, a bit more scalable, and also gives you the opportunity to identify ways to instruct your partners, especially, you know, if you're using a, you know, PRM system or, you know, content delivery system to make that process a bit more scalable, you know, delivering the content to partners. You can instruct them on ways to further tailor or personalize the content so it not only best reflects their brand, but also their positioning in the marketplace as well. And on the screen here are some more examples for, you know, demand gen content and lead gen content for NASDAQ, and we helped create a big rock asset around cyber risk and cybersecurity and governance, you know, very foundational piece that told their overarching thought leadership story. And then we broke it down into a few modular pieces, including a infographic, which was further broken down into social images, and a checklist that was more tactical and best practice oriented. So again, just another example there. And, you know, we want to dig a little bit deeper, I think, into that reversioning and repurposing story, because as we talk about scalable content creation and getting the most value out of your content investments, repurposing and reversioning is a really powerful way to do that. So I'm going to hand it off to Brenda to dig a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, and also on that, just to add to that, those Go Live kits that I was talking about on the last discussion, since they had 5 solutions, we created templates for those kits. So that's also one way to go modular or templated, so that once you create the first one, it's very quick and easy. Each one has the exact same elements that are designed in fundamentally the same way, but just customized and tailored for that particular product. And the other thing that I'm seeing is that we're seeing a lot of demand for sales decks that are modular, so that the partners can take just the pieces that they want and use them. They can do the whole presentation. They can just take pieces. They can basically pick and choose to customize it for their needs. So that's another way to think about economies of scale and making things modular and also speeding up the production process. Alicia, were you going to talk a little bit about tailoring content to target accounts and industries?
Yeah.
Would you like me to go into that? Okay. Why don't you start and then I'll jump in.
Okay, sounds good, Brenda. Yeah, so I think really the key thing to call out here is, you know, we're seeing a lot more interest in creating more targeted content for specific audiences, whether it be target accounts or specific industries. And I know this is especially critical in the channel community, especially if, you know, your partner has expertise in retail or in hospitality, you know, financial services. So to our point around scalable content creation and the ability to further customize, you know, you can do that in a sliding scale, right? And you'll see that on the screen. So it's the one-to-one approach where you have a specific company that you're trying to target, and that's really just a matter of, you know, tweaking, you know, headlines and sublines and, you know, sprinkling in some high-level detail about the company to prove that, you know and understand their particular business. And of course, that requires a bit more heavy lifting. So, you know, we would recommend that, you know, vendors and their partners do some extensive planning discussions around who they would be targeting for that, versus more one-to-few or one-to-many, which, like we noted earlier, that's more around, you know, including relevant industry statistics and data, including relevant insights for those target buyers in, say, retail or financial services. So having that core story be the same, but refining those subtle points throughout the text to illustrate that you understand their particular market, you understand their pain points that they're navigating, not just in their role, but in their particular industry. And that ties back to the point that Andrew brought up earlier around, you know, buyers really wanting more context, more contextual content that shows that that a vendor not only has the right solutions for them, but they have the added expertise that's required to best meet their needs.
I'll add to that one. That's okay.
Okay.
So we'll look at this because this really talks to how to repurpose and reversion to extend your content and obviously to extend your development investment. As the last example showed, you know, we created for both of these customers, Cengage and SOC Telemed, we created a foundational piece. The first one, Cengage, they're in the higher education publishing business, and we created this ebook in the middle, a new way to look at learning. The whole focus of this is why go digital. So everything revolved around that particular message. So that we created the ebook, and then from that we created additional derivative content. We did an infographic, which you can see a portion of here on the right. We did a checklist. So all of it really pulls from this foundational piece that allows them to really expand. And one of the things that this does is by creating this derivative content, it gives you content to use if you're going to do a campaign where you want to go, say, early, middle, late stage, top, middle, bottom of the funnel, where you might use the infographic. For example, you could embed it in a blog post. You can use it on its own, but it gets their interest and gives them some general information and then guides them maybe to another piece of content, which might then take them to the checklist, which might take them to the ebook. So there are a couple philosophies. Some people like to get the big rock piece in early, and others want to wait until people are farther along the journey and really are wanting to dive in and get all that detailed information. And then, of course, there's the third philosophy is that you let people binge in any way, direction, form they want to go, and just give them a resource page where they can look for all the content they want. This second example is really very similar, but you can see it's a very different kind of client. So SOC telemedicine provider, both the platform as well as the specialist. And again, we created an ebook as the main piece, and in this case, this is early stage content, really helping to drive the message and educate hospitals, healthcare systems that how acute care telemedicine can help them fill gaps in their ability to deliver care. So we created the ebook, and then we also, again, created, in this case, it's also an infographic and a checklist. And then back to the point, and here we're looking at the same audience, but keep in mind that you can also reversion based on a lot of different things. So it might be by persona. So in one case, for example, for SOC Telemed, they might be going to administration. In another, they might actually want to talk to physicians or specialists who need the help. So there are a lot of different ways they go. We can also reversion based on geography, whether it's North America or EMEA or APAC, which we do a lot for our clients. We will create content that is, say, for the India market and use specific examples and photography for that market, and then reversion it for, say, North America or Asia. And the other thing you can also do is target by industry. So if you are selling into different industries, it can be as simple as just some language changes to target a different industry, even though everything else stays the same. We see that a lot, say, in the financial industry, where there are some subtle differences, but same basic pain points. For example, if you're in asset management versus banking versus insurance. So while the pain points stay the same, you really need to just tweak the language so that it really speaks and feels like it's tailored to them.
Great. Thanks, Brenda. So I think with all of these conversations and points we're bringing up around context and creating a more immersive and relevant experience for our buyers, it's appropriate for us to talk about the value of interactive because, there have been a lot of conversations around, oh, well, our buyers have an attention span of 8 seconds, like a goldfish, and, you need to create short and concise content. Well, the need to be concise is very true. We stand by the belief that if your content is good, if it's relevant, and if it's memorable, your buyers can have no problem consuming it. So that really speaks to the value of interactivity. It really allows people to, peel back the layer, so to speak, on the content story and dig into the sections that are most relevant for them. And I'm going to share a few examples of what I mean by that exactly. So this is just a quick snapshot of some interactive piece that we did with a client called Aptos. They're in the retail industry. And their goal was to really create a immersive experience that spoke to both small brands that were trying to grow and scale globally, but also to those large, big box, big brand retailers that were trying to engage with their audiences in a more tailored and relevant way. So what we did was, we created a foundational story that spoke to both audiences, and there was a point in the experience where you can see on the screen right now where people could self-select what type of business they really were. And when they clicked, they actually were able to unlock content that was most relevant to them. And each persona kind of had their own 4-step journey to global and local excellence. And all of the content, although that base story was the same, it was more tailored to that target persona, including the stats we used, the examples, and the best practices, since there was so much variance between those two groups. So again, this is an example of one overarching content experience that had those little interactive rabbit holes that allowed them to have a more tailored experience. The other powerful form of interactive content, are benchmarking tools. And this could be as granular as, you put in actual numbers to get a tailored output. Or it could be in the case of, say, you did a research report where you surveyed a large group of partners or end customers, and you have those benchmarks to begin with, and you create an interactive experience that highlights not only some of the key takeaways, but also some of the key challenges, the key pain points, and that makes for a really powerful story, right? Are you making the same mistakes as your industry? Are you, exceeding the competition in some way and using those benchmarks as the foundation? And this is actually a listicle experience where people could kind of go through those key points, and we use benchmark data as kind of the star of the points that we were trying to make. And finally, this is actually an example from a partner of ours, Theros, one of their clients. And this is a really powerful ROI calculator, especially for later stages in the buying process, the decision-making process, rather. People are looking for investment rationale. So we see benchmark and ROI calculators being really powerful at this stage because people want to reaffirm that they're making that final decision correctly. They want to make sure that there is a strong financial story, that they can not only feel peace of mind in the investment, but they can also communicate the value of that investment to other stakeholders and, decision makers in the process. So that's another format, interactive format that allows people to kind of dictate their own experience and receive those personalized outputs. And it's also pretty scalable too. If you have a license, you can kind of make those subtle changes on the back end, or if you work with an agency that has, an account, it's pretty turnkey to make those changes on the fly and create, more individualized experiences for target accounts or target industries. And I think we have one more topic. We want to dig a little bit deeper into the value of influencer marketing, which, has been getting a lot of buzz lately. But there is a very specific and valuable way to do this in context of channel, especially as you strive to better position yourselves and your partners as thought leaders in your particular, industries or verticals. So, Brenna, I'm going to hand it off to you there.
Yeah, so influencer marketing is there is tremendous growth in this area, and it's not just influencer, but the combination, I think, of influencer and thought leadership is really powerful. And one of the things that you can do is use your partners as influencers. They are experts in their field. They have credibility because they are not so closely tied to the brand. And going back to that first stat that we looked at the beginning about how people trust information that comes from third parties more than the brand trying to sell them something. So I think this is something really powerful. So don't overlook spotlighting your partners. It also helps build a long-term relationship with them. It can extend across different channels and tactics. So you can use them as guest bloggers. You can use them in a range of content. We've got one client that created a partner ebook, influencer ebook, that turned out great, very powerful for them, where they had each of the high-level executives from the brand and their partner interviewed, and then they also interviewed other internal and external influencers, and it turned into a very powerful piece in the banking industry. So don't forget to spotlight your partner community by using them as influencers, and it's also a good way to find those influencers without having to do a lot of legwork. Want to wrap it up, Alicia?
Yep, absolutely. So just a few quick examples, again, from an interactive standpoint. This is from one of our sister brands, Retail Touchpoints, and this was a pretty direct spotlight of a variety of partners in the payment space. Very different value props, very different experiences, and the goal was to really walk through those scenarios and spotlight them as best practices. So to Brenda's point, it's more thought leadership driven versus, product specs and, those proof points. So, it's more editorial in tone and style, and therefore more valuable for those more top of funnel, early stage buyers. And another example of just that, ABM in action, this was, more direct Q&As and columns with experts. So when you're just thinking of these different formats and different approaches to influencer content, it really does depend on how involved your partner community does want to get, and you may decide, how you want to tackle that in your strategic discussions. But having these tailored Q&As where you spotlight an expert from, a partner organization is really impactful because, who doesn't want to be spotlighted as an expert, right? So it's good for you because it gives you a lot of really powerful content to work with. And it's good for them too because, especially for those smaller, partners, whether it's, system integrators or simply resellers, sometimes they don't have the time or bandwidth to dedicate to those more thought leadership driven activities. So this is a great way to help them, take that next step. And I think we'll just kind of run through this quickly. A lot of these new formats, especially interactive, really lend themselves well to new, deeper metrics in terms of content consumption. So, there is value in those early discussions with your partners, determining how you're going to be measuring success. So really think hard about that process and, how you're going to be closing that loop to determine marketing's impact on, partner and just overall channel opportunities. And then finally, we actually had some experience with one client who was in the process of merging their partner networks together after, a merger, and they wanted to gauge, what was working well and what wasn't in their respective partner networks. So we helped them develop a survey that went out to these two communities, not only how often and through which channels they use to communicate with them, but also everything from their, training and enablement to incentives or MDS opportunities, all the way through to the content that they were providing, not just for their partners' education, but also the content that they would be using for campaigns. So if you're trying to gauge what your partner community wants, we always harness the power of research data. We think it's a really impactful way to show your partner community that you care about what they have to say. But most of all, you have to apply those takeaways as you try to develop your content strategy moving forward. So I know this was a very deep conversation. We got into the nitty-gritty of some examples, how they align to new buyer realities and content consumption preferences. So just a few takeaways here to keep in mind. Always start with your buyer. That's really the foundation of all of this. Understand their needs, their pain points, how they want to consume information. That's really going to be the foundation for not only your messaging, but also the formats and the amplification tactics you use. Having that initial alignment, those strategic conversations with your partners as far as what they need and want from the content that you create, that's really a powerful roadmap to success because you want to make sure that they're using that content that you put so much time and effort into creating. And then that, of course, aligns as you develop your objectives, develop the metrics, what you're going to be tracking and why. And then look at your existing content. See what could possibly be reused or repurposed for different formats, for different industry verticals, or even for specific accounts. Again, all of these points should be coming out of that initial strategic conversation with individual partners or, through a survey. So that'll give you a powerful baseline as far as, what you want to prioritize. And then, don't be afraid to look at interactive as an opportunity. I know we've had a lot of conversations with prospects saying, oh, well, I don't know if it's right for my audience and I'm not sure how they consume content. Again, interactive offers a wealth of metrics as far as, time on site, number of clicks. If you embed videos, the number of plays. So it's really a lot deeper and granular than, oh, we got X number of downloads and you have no insight into whether people actually engaged with that content. So try and start small, maybe start off with like one piece for one particular audience. And again, because interactive can be so scalable, that kind of gives you an opportunity to test and tweak things and determine, what may help drive that further engagement. So just to wrap it up quickly, this is the why we're here, right? So Content for Demand is a B2B agency and we specialize in the complexity that often comes with B2B, with channel. And our goal is to take that complexity of your particular industry, of understanding your buyer, and really turning these complex topics and concepts into conversational content and compelling experiences, whether that's through, those traditional static formats or whether that's through interactive experiences. So we start to really act as an extension of our client's marketing team, which, in some of these channel organizations, time and resources are sometimes hard to come by, right? So our goal is to really help not only guide the strategic elements, but also oversee the actual content creation, from interviewing SMEs and developing that messaging all the way through to providing some amplification, content that you can use for social and for other channels. So really, really excited to be here again and to share some of our learnings and our best practices that we've acquired over the years. I know we're going to go into Q&A right now, but if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media or through other channels, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation. Andrew, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia and Brenda. There's a ton of good ideas, good examples. So I'll go ahead and get on Q&A. Reminder, if you can go ahead and type in questions. We've got some good ones come in, and I want to go ahead and jump right to those. We had a question from Laura. She liked the examples you were showing around influencer content, and it's something that she's going to explore. She asked about how to pick which partners to try to engage around influencer, and any other tips or best practices to consider when putting together an influencer program.
I can take that one, Andrew. So influencers, really the place to start is aligning where their specialties are. So when we do research on influencers, we look at the areas where they're doing really deep activity, where the areas that they're excited about. If they've written articles or blogs on specific topics, I think that's a good indicator of where their strengths are and what they would be what they would be best at talking about. So really just look for those clues when you're looking at your partner influencers. Perhaps they focus on a specific industry, so you might want to look at using them as a thought leader in that industry and look at where the trends are going in that industry, for example. But that's just one example, and there are many others, but I'll stop right there unless anybody else has anything to add to that.
Nope, I'm good.
All right, great. All right, so a question from Kathy. Alicia, you talked about interactive. She said they're considering doing interactive. Any thing you can provide on how, does it take longer than regular content was one of her questions, and any other things they should think about before they dive in.
Great question. Yeah, so I will say up front that interactive does take a little bit more time, but that's largely from a design and development standpoint. And the great thing is that you don't have to custom build all the time. It really does depend on some of the security implications or IT implications. So I would say from a planning standpoint up front, have those conversations with your tech and compliance team if you have one, because you don't want to put the time and money into investing in, say, interactive platform or anything like that, and come to find that there are firewalls that prevent you from using it. So that's the one key thing to remember. And then, if you can invest in content, interactive content, and take that leap, that's fantastic. I would say bake in an extra 1 to 2 weeks for that development process, because it will take some time to do the coding if you're custom building it, and even if you're using a platform like, say, Theros, your design team does have to build that experience within the platform. And I think that the biggest piece to consider from a content strategy and content creation standpoint is this isn't just about, taking normal ebook or white paper copy, slapping it in an interactive platform and shipping it out, right? You really have to think experience first. You have to think about how you want your audience to interact with the content. Do you want them to reveal content? Do you want them to go to a very specific experience that's the most relevant to them? This is the high-level strategic discussion you have to have with your content team, because you want to make sure that they're fully engaging with that experience. And then the next step is, of course, creating the content, the actual copy in a way that scales best to that experience. So we'll actually have really close design alignment, with our team from the beginning. So content and design gets together early on to talk about the experience, the objectives of the piece. And then that helps guide not only word count, but also overall structure, tone and style. We're seeing this big shift towards more, personal tone and style, especially for interactive because it's easier to consume. And then, we kind of go through an extensive wireframing process as well. And that only takes, a few hours, I would say, a very rough sketch of how the content will flow through that base design. So again, in sum, maybe an extra 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how quickly your team works and if it's the only big project you're working on. And then, have those very foundational discussions with your design team to outline that experience and how the content is going to be presented in that experience. And that will set you up for success, because if you're just creating a normal ebook, you'll probably reach a few hiccups once it gets passed off to design, because they'll tell you that it just doesn't render well. So that'll save you definitely a few days in terms of editing and making revises.
Okay, awesome. Great detail. All right, we're going to take one more question. We're getting tight on time here. Brenda, maybe you could take this one. Brian asked, he said, I know you talked about trying to do more buyer-oriented content, but there's still a need for product-specific. He's asking specifically about like new product launches. Any ideas about how to approach content for like new product launches, for educating internal stakeholders as well as partners?
Sure. In the case of, say, a new product launch, I think it's important to remember, even though you want to talk about the product, you still need to do it from the buyer's perspective. So what pain point does it alleviate for them? What challenge does it help them overcome? And I think that's the best approach when, obviously, with a product launch, you've got to start being specific about the brand and the product. You can't do a lot of thought leadership, although you still can at this point perhaps do, say, something like a blog post that's very thought leadership about where trends are going, and then introduce how a new product ties into that. That might be a good way to launch into it. But just in general, again, even though it's product-based, it's best not to start thinking initially about all the specifics of it, the speeds and feeds, but start with the benefits and start with the pain points of the buyer. That's always the place that we start. Every piece of content you create has to start from the buyer perspective.
For product type launches, or when you are needing to do product oriented content, are there any examples of like programs or ways that you've seen that done well?
Again, I think it's about giving your partners tools. So the campaign toolkits, for example, the Go Live kits, give them tools to help them tell the story, to help educate them on the product, and then in turn educate anyone that they need to educate, their prospects and clients. So create those campaign toolkits for them, give them information about, going back to the Micron Interactive campaign toolkit we looked at, give them information about not only the product, but who their audience is, give them the key talking points, tell them what order they might use the content in, how to do it, even write emails for them to help them communicate the right information and in a very consistent way across all of your partners and all of your brands, so that everybody is getting the same message and it's accurate. Does that help?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you both, Alicia and Brenda. I thought these were some really great examples people can learn from, and some great tips on how to apply it across the partner community. So thanks again for your time. Really awesome work here. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our session today. This will be the final session in the Channel Week series. It's a reminder to everybody that all the sessions will be available online. So if you missed any, you can go back and check out the full agenda. You can also share the links to the sessions with your peers. Content across the week, so I want to thank all of our presenters and encourage everybody to go back and check it out. Also a reminder that we will be doing our channel track as part of our B2BMX event. It's coming up in February, so check out the agenda for that, and again, our registration page for that is open. So thanks again, everybody. Please go back and take advantage of the content, and thanks again for everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.